My name is Lila Hart, I'm 31, and I grew up in a small Ohio town where my mom worked nights as a nurse and my dad fixed school buses in a drafty garage. I learned early to keep receipts, label boxes, and remember what people say when they think no one is listening. That habit is the reason I can tell you this story without shaking. It is also the reason my husband thought he could erase me with a signature. The hook is simple. He received $300 million and threw me out the same day. Austin was warm that afternoon, the kind of heat that makes glassware hum in the cabinets. I was icing a lemon cake for our quiet celebration. He came home in a navy suit he rented when we were broke, back when we laughed at rental tags stitched into collars. His smile looked painted on. He kissed the air next to my cheek and set a thick envelope on the counter. I thought it was a card. It was divorce papers. My hands went cold. I said his name, Miles, and the sound felt wrong in my mouth, like chewing ice. He talked fast, all business, no softness. He said the buyout closed, the lawyers handled everything, and we were no longer aligned. He slid a pen toward me and asked me to acknowledge service. I looked at the lemon glaze dripping down the side of the cake and thought about our first apartment, when the fridge door would not seal, and we used a chair to keep it shut. He picked up my suitcase from the hallway and set it by the door. I asked why. He said the word growth. I asked when he decided. He said months. I asked if there was someone else. He said irrelevant. It was the strangest courtroom with no judge, only a kitchen light buzzing above, two people who could no longer find common words. I wanted to scream, but my voice stayed small because I know that loud words cannot beat a practiced silence. I signed nothing. I slid my wedding band off and put it on the counter next to the lemon zest. My chest felt hollow and wide, like a mall at closing time. He opened the door. The evening smelled like hot cedar and faint gasoline. I carried my suitcase past the rosemary bushes I planted in coffee cans our first spring in Texas. He said he would have my things sent. He said he was sorry in a tone that meant he was not. I drove with no plan. I put my phone on airplane mode, so it could not hurt me. I passed the river and the bats under the bridge, and the food trucks with their tin roofs shining under string lights. I thought about how money makes a small sound when it moves through wire and a big sound when it lands in an empty house. I pulled into a grocery store lot and let the air conditioning blow on my face until my tears stopped burning. I remembered my mom's voice. Keep your paper straight, baby. The person who files first wins. I folded the passenger seat down and tried to sleep. Street cleaners hissed by. A boy on a skateboard drifted across the far end of the lot, wheels tapping. I watched the ceiling fabric above me and traced the tiny holes with my eyes until my mind slowed. When I finally slipped under, I dreamed of yellow legal pads and red ink. My phone vibrated on the seat beside me. It was 3:17 in the morning. I stared at his name on the screen and felt the air change. I let it ring, once, twice, 3 times. On the fourth, I answered and said nothing. His voice sounded cracked, like a radio far from town. He asked where I was. He said the bank had locked the accounts. He said there was a missing signature, and they would not move a dollar without it. He said only I could fix it. He asked me, please. I let the silence breathe. A printer clicked in the background. A door shut. His breath scraped the line. I pictured the folders in my trunk, coffee rings on the covers, dates only I remembered. I pictured the living room floor years ago, our pitch deck built with tape and hope. He once promised he would never forget who stood beside him. Lemon stung my tongue. My hands stopped shaking. I'll call you, I said, and ended the call. The windshield was black glass, and in it I saw my face, awake for the first time, fully. Waiting. I woke with the sun already too bright, the windshield fogged where my breath had drawn a faint oval during sleep. My neck ached. The grocery store lot was empty except for a delivery truck idling near the loading bay. I sat up, wiped the glass with my sleeve, and watched 2 birds pick at a stray tortilla by the curb. I did not cry. I counted my cash, checked the fuel gauge, and told myself out loud that the first hour of the day belonged to me. I drove through a car wash and paid for the cheapest rinse. Soap slid down the glass like milk. The brushes thumped, and I let the noise drown out every thought except one. Survive the morning. After, I parked by the river and ate a granola bar from the glove box. A runner passed with a dog, nodding as if we shared a secret. I texted later. I went to our storage unit on the edge of town. The air inside smelled like cardboard and dust. I unlocked the metal door and stared at the life we used to be, stacked in plastic bins, Halloween lights, a beat-up coffee table, the space heater that saved us during the ice storm. I found a sleeping bag and a pillow, and felt rich in a new way. I laid them in the back of the car and folded the seats down flatter. A small win. As the day climbed, I thought about the first time we came to Austin. We had a mattress on the floor, a pot, 2 plates, and a whiteboard with a crooked grid. Miles coded until dawn while I learned to run payroll, read cap tables, and build tidy documents from messy sentences. I made him practice his pitches in front of a wall so he would stop looking at his shoes. He said I was the only person who could spot a fake number from 6 feet away. I believed him. At noon I found a cheap diner that smelled like syrup and coffee. The waitress called everyone Han and refilled my mug without asking. I ordered toast and eggs because it felt like a promise. I wrote a list on a receipt. Find a lawyer. Change passwords. Breathe. A man at the counter kept glancing at me. He paid his bill, stood, and left a business card tucked under my mug. A legal aid clinic. I slid it into my wallet. The afternoon was hot and flat. I sat in a library to charge my phone. Kids whispered in the next aisle, trying to be quiet and failing in the sweetest way. I opened a blank note and typed dates from memory. Early contracts, investor calls, state filings, the day the convertible note converted, the date the Delaware Amendment was signed. The act of typing steadied me. I heard my mom again. Details are a shield when you cannot lift a sword. I checked my email. There were messages from people who used to hover around us like bees near a glass jar. Congratulations, dinner invitations, requests for seats on a future fund. I deleted them unread. I kept one from the bank unread too, a notice that looked important but not for me. Not yet. I closed the laptop and watched a dust mote float through a shaft of light, slow as a snowflake in warm air. Near dusk, I called my dad in Ohio. I told him I was safe. I did not tell him where I slept. He told me the same story he always tells when my world tilts. When I was 8, I found a lost wallet at the county fair and walked it to the booth. It held rent money. The woman cried. My dad said, "You always had steady hands. Keep them steady now." I ended the call and watched the sky turn the color of a bruised peach. A breeze came up and rattled the leaves. I felt something click inside me, as if a drawer slid all the way closed. I took a slow breath. I reached for my bag to find lip balm, and my fingers brushed a stiff edge I didn't expect. There was a thick folder tucked beneath my notebook. It was not mine. It was from the house, from the kitchen counter. I pulled it into my lap and stared at the label written in Miles's slanted print. The label said, "Closing package." I laid the folder across the steering wheel and opened it like I was lifting the lid off something that could bite. Inside were neat tabs: escrow, consents, board, schedules, exhibits. The paper was heavy, the font clean, the tone certain. My name was nowhere on the cover. That felt familiar. Some people want your work invisible until it is the only thing keeping the bridge from falling. I read the summary of the sale. All cash, buyer out of New York, money to move upon final confirmation of signatures. I read the officer consents. I recognized names of men who shook my hand at parties and told me I kept everything so tidy. I circled dates, noted timestamps, and copied them into a notebook I kept for storms. Halfway through escrow instructions, a clause raised its hand. It required a founder's spousal consent because our early state filing listed me as spouse with a community property interest in all pre-marriage intellectual property. Years ago, I scanned that form on a Sunday night while we ate noodles out of mugs. The sale could not close without my consent or a court order. The line for my signature stared up at me. Blank. I leaned back and let the car ceiling come into focus, tiny holes like cheap stars. I thought about the winter in Ohio when the heater died and we wore hats in the kitchen. Back then we were a team. I remembered the night a developer quit, and I rebuilt payroll at 3 a.m. so no one's rent would bounce. Miles said, "I don't deserve you." Today he tried to act like he owned the air I breathed. I kept going. Behind the tabs sat printed emails. I traced the headers with my finger. Date, time, sender. In one, his lawyer asked, "Has your spouse executed the consent? Bank cannot release without all spousal consents." Miles wrote back, "She will sign." The timestamp matched the hour he set out plates for cake. I pictured him promising my name without asking my mouth. I built a quick timeline on a clean sheet. Austin move. C check. First data room. Spousal notice. Employee handbook. First term sheet. Today's eviction. The 3:17 a.m. call. When I put it in a line, the story made a shape I could understand. One long ask, one sudden erase, one quiet return. The board consents were signed in a row 15 minutes apart, like an assembly line. One had a re-upload note for a date error. I wrote that down. The schedule of intellectual property looked thin. I knew early prototypes were missing. Buyers hate surprises, banks hate them more. I underlined the thin parts like they were cracks in drywall. In the last tab, I found a draft list titled Key Personnel for Retention Bonuses. My name was not there. A line below said, Unwritten Operations Handoff Maintained by Spouse. I read it twice. They had put my work in the margin because margins are easy to cut. The page was the first time in hours I felt the floor under me again. The car filled with moth light around the dome bulb. I closed the folder and opened my laptop. I made a list of what I would need if this turned into weather. Old bank authorizations, vendor agreements, the first Delaware filing, the early NDA that named both of us by default. If a storm was coming, I would meet it with dry feet. A new email arrived from the bank with the subject, pending confirmation. It said that due to community property rules and unresolved spousal consent, disbursement remained on hold. If consent is not delivered by noon next business day, it read, funds will remain in escrow and status will be reported to buyer. When a mountain moves, you do not run. You plant your feet and watch the slope. I turned off the light. Highway sound washed by. I thought about calling him. I thought about calling the legal aid clinic on the card from the diner. Not yet. I folded my hands and let a plan settle. Protect myself first, then tell the truth with paper. I slid the spousal consent page out. The blank line waited. I uncapped a pen and held it above the paper, not to sign, but to feel the weight of what a line can do. Something bright stuck from the folder's edge, a yellow post-it I had missed. I tugged it free. In Miles's quick hand, remind L to sign before wire. My name reduced to a letter. My future reduced to a reminder. I held the note until the ink blurred. Then my phone lit up with an unknown number calling, cutting the dark in two. I woke with the sun already too bright, the windshield fogged where my breath had drawn a faint oval during sleep. My neck ached. The grocery store lot was empty except for a delivery truck idling near the loading bay. I sat up, wiped the glass with my sleeve, and watched two birds pick at a stray tortilla by the curb. I did not cry. I counted my cash, checked the fuel gauge, and told myself out loud that the first hour of the day belonged to me. I drove through a car wash and paid for the cheapest rinse. Soap slid down the glass like milk. The brushes thumped, and I let the noise drown out every thought except one. Survive the morning. After, I parked by the river and ate a granola bar from the glove box. A runner passed with a dog, nodding as if we shared a secret. I texted later. I went to our storage unit on the edge of town. The air inside smelled like cardboard and dust. I unlocked the metal door and stared at the life we used to be, stacked in plastic bins, Halloween lights, a beat-up coffee table, the space heater that saved us during the ice storm. I found a sleeping bag and a pillow, and felt rich in a new way. I laid them in the back of the car and folded the seats down flatter. A small win. As the day climbed, I thought about the first time we came to Austin. We had a mattress on the floor, a pot, 2 plates, and a whiteboard with a crooked grid. Miles coded until dawn while I learned to run payroll, read cap tables, and build tidy documents from messy sentences. I made him practice his pitches in front of a wall so he would stop looking at his shoes. He said I was the only person who could spot a fake number from 6 feet away. I believed him. At noon I found a cheap diner that smelled like syrup and coffee. The waitress called everyone Han and refilled my mug without asking. I ordered toast and eggs because it felt like a promise. I wrote a list on a receipt. Find a lawyer. Change passwords. Breathe. A man at the counter kept glancing at me. He paid his bill, stood, and left a business card tucked under my mug. A legal aid clinic. I slid it into my wallet. The afternoon was hot and flat. I sat in a library to charge my phone. Kids whispered in the next aisle, trying to be quiet and failing in the sweetest way. I opened a blank note and typed dates from memory. Early contracts, investor calls, state filings, the day the convertible note converted, the date the Delaware Amendment was signed. The act of typing steadied me. I heard my mom again. Details are a shield when you cannot lift a sword. I checked my email. There were messages from people who used to hover around us like bees near a glass jar. Congratulations, dinner invitations, requests for seats on a future fund. I deleted them unread. I kept one from the bank unread too, a notice that looked important but not for me. Not yet. I closed the laptop and watched a dust mote float through a shaft of light, slow as a snowflake in warm air. Near dusk, I called my dad in Ohio. I told him I was safe. I did not tell him where I slept. He told me the same story he always tells when my world tilts. When I was 8, I found a lost wallet at the county fair and walked it to the booth. It held rent money. The woman cried. My dad said, "You always had steady hands. Keep them steady now." I ended the call and watched the sky turn the color of a bruised peach. A breeze came up and rattled the leaves. I felt something click inside me, as if a drawer slid all the way closed. I took a slow breath. I reached for my bag to find lip balm, and my fingers brushed a stiff edge I didn't expect. There was a thick folder tucked beneath my notebook. It was not mine. It was from the house, from the kitchen counter. I pulled it into my lap and stared at the label written in Miles's slanted print. The label said, "Closing package." By morning I chose a base, a 24-hour diner off North Lamar where the coffee never slept and the booths let you disappear. I ordered oatmeal and fruit and spread the folder across the formica, like a map. Forks, low talk, a radio whisper. Ordinary sounds steadied my breathing. I built a clean index with page numbers and the words courts care about. I flagged every place the sale relied on things I controlled. Spousal consent, admin passwords, vendor histories, the original NDA with both our names. On a second sheet, I listed what I would not do. Not shout, not post, not let pity or rage choose my moves. Paper would be my voice. A man in a gray cap took the booth across from me. When I stood to stretch, he nodded at my tabs and said, "You sort for a living?" I said, "I sort to live." He introduced himself as Theo, ran a print shop, and sometimes helped a legal aid clinic make exhibits. "If you need clean copies, first runs on me," he said. People who work with paper know the shape of trouble when they see it folded on a table. I stepped outside and called the clinic number on the card from yesterday. A calm voice took my name and gave me a late afternoon slot. I wrote questions in block letters. What to do before speaking to him, how to guard shared access, how to keep the bank from pushing without my consent. The clinic sat in a small brick building near a bus stop. Inside, posters used plain words for heavy things. A lawyer named Dana met me in a quiet office. I told the short version. She listened like a nurse. Eyes steady, hands still. "You did right to wait," she said. She explained community property in Texas, how spousal consents work, how banks freeze rather than risk a bad release. Dana read the clause twice and tapped the line about pre-marriage contributions. "This is leverage built on boring Sundays," she said. She outlined steps. Document everything. Keep originals safe. Do not meet him alone. If possible, hire private counsel. Consider temporary orders to protect property. Silence is not weakness, she added. Silence is strategy when paper is on your side. I drove back to the diner and made 2 clean sets of copies on Theo's small machine, sealing them in big envelopes, one for the clinic, one to mail to my dad in Ohio. I wrote his address with care, each number a promise. I ate grits and eggs, read my lists, and added 2 rules. Never meet without my own witness. If I speak to him, ask questions and answer none. Near midnight, the diner thinned to night workers and quiet couples. I rinsed my face, braided my hair, and returned to the booth. I set my phone face up and centered the folder. I told myself, hold your line. The air conditioner hummed. A truck pulled in and out. Time passed, noticeable, but not heavy. I let it ring once while I studied my notes. On the first page, I had written 3 short lines. Protect, verify, decide. Protect meant my safety and my records. Verify meant checking every claim with dates, drafts, and metadata. Decide meant using my values, not my anger, to choose the next step. I underlined decide twice. If money is loud, integrity is the steady drum under it. I wanted the steady sound. Back inside, Dana called to confirm she had scanned the set I left and would hold it in their fireproof drawer. Her calm made more room in my chest. If he reaches out, she said, remember you are not obligated to fix his emergency. You are obligated to yourself. I thanked her and promised to call after I slept. The diner lights made a halo on the chrome napkin holder. Outside, the parking lot was a dark plate with a single moth moving through it. The world felt slow and ready, like a held breath. At 3:17 a.m., my phone began to buzz on the table. The name on the screen was the one that used to mean home. The name flashed. I let 2 rings pass, then answered and said nothing. Silence is a rope. People braid their fear into it. Lila? Where are you?
His voice was raw.
A printer chattered behind him, drawers slammed, shoes crossed a hard floor. I'm safe. The bank froze everything, he said. They won't release the wire. There's a missing spousal consent. It's yours. I need you to sign. The buyer is furious. We have a deadline. I looked at my notes. Ask questions, answer none. Who told you it was missing? The bank. My lawyer. Their lawyer. When did you learn it? Tonight. What happens if it's still missing at noon? They keep funds in escrow. They report to the buyer. It looks bad. For who? For me. For the company. Why did you put the folder in my bag? I didn't. Maybe I did. I was rushing. Lila, please. I made a mistake. Mistake like serving me divorce papers the day you got $300 million? A door closed on his end. I shouldn't have done that. I thought this would be clean. You threw me out, I said. Clean is not the word. You helped build this, he said. The team needs this. Investors need this. If this fails, I am not us anymore, I said. What did your lawyer advise? That you should sign.
Routine.
We'll sort the rest later. Why did your lawyer ask whether your spouse executed the consent if it is routine? It's standard to check. And why did you promise I would sign before you asked me? Paper rustled. I will make it right. I'll be generous. I am not a pet, I said. Who else knows? The buyer's counsel, our counsel, the bank officer. He gave names and titles. I wrote them down, along with times of each call. What are you asking me to do right now? Come sign. Where? At the office. Or I can bring it to you. You don't know where I am. I will not meet you alone. Then name a place. Please. I will consider it, I said. First, my own counsel will review the documents. We don't have time. You had time. I kept my voice quiet. I will not be rushed.
He softened.
We built this together. Don't make it ugly. You made it ugly when you treated me like a line item. I'll wire you money today, he said. Enough to acknowledge your support. My value is not a gift card. Your money is not a leash. Then what do you want? The truth recorded. My safety. My name used where my work built the ground. I can put your name in the press release, he said. In the records, I said. After you sign. The consent is a key. When I turn it, doors move. I won't turn it in the dark. Tell me what to do, he said. Send the full set to my email tonight, I said. No redactions. Include board minutes, escrow instructions, and bank correspondence. Copy your counsel and the bank officer. Then stop calling. My lawyer will respond in the morning. Who is your lawyer? You'll see the signature. I did not have one yet, but I had Dana and the clinic and the truth that helps the right person say yes. I'm sorry, he said. I believe you're sorry you're scared. That is not the same. Do you want the house? The car? I want sleep. And I want you to stop trying to pay me to hurry. A shadow crossed the diner window. A tall figure in a sharp suit paused, looking in. The glass showed my face, my notes, and the stranger's outline joined to mine in reflection. Miles, I asked, eyes on the door. Did you send someone?
No.
I'm alone. I kept my eyes on the glass and spoke to the phone like it was a deposition. Here are my rules, I said. 1. I meet only with counsel present. 2. Everything in writing. 3. No promises until I review originals. I could hear him catalog the words the way he catalogs investor asks, sorting them into boxes marked doable, delay, deny. You're angry, he said, trying to name my weather. I'm clear, I said. There's a difference. I let a breath out slow. You forgot today. You forgot when you planned a clean exit and wrote my name as a letter on a post-it. I palmed the note in my pocket and felt the thin paper give. He tried a new angle. Reporters are asking questions. If the money doesn't move, they'll start calling you. Think about your privacy. He sighed, and the sound had new weight in it. Okay, I'll send what you asked. Good, I said. Sleep now. I can't, he said. Not until this is fixed. That is not my job anymore. I pressed the phone to my cheek, felt the heat of my own face, and saw the suited figure's hand rise as if to push the door. I slid my notebook into the folder and straightened my spine. End the call, I said. Send the documents. Wait. Lila. He sounded small. I'll call you back, I said, and lowered the phone without breaking eye contact with the man outside.
Slowly.
The handle turned. The man in the suit stepped inside the diner. His shoes clicked against the tile floor like metronomes counting down. He looked around the empty booths until his eyes met mine. For a second, I thought Miles had sent him. My chest tightened, but then he walked past me and ordered a coffee to go. The waitress filled the cup without asking questions. He left without turning back. My heart slowed, but the warning stayed. People who think they're invisible often move in plain sight. I went back to my booth and wrote a new line in my notes. Never assume I'm alone. That was the moment I realized survival wasn't just about paper trails, it was about being ready when silence turns loud. I asked for the check and left a bigger tip than I could afford because sometimes kindness is my armor. The mornings stretched long. I drove through downtown and watched buildings glitter with new money. I thought about how fast lives change in cities like Austin, where one deal can lift someone from a folding chair to a penthouse. I whispered to myself that paper could also bring people back down. I parked under a pecan tree and leaned the seat back. I thought of my childhood again, the nights when Mom came home with sore feet, still humming hymns. She always said, people may not remember what you gave, but the records do. At the time, I thought she meant library cards and overdue slips. Now I knew she meant everything. When I finally slept, my dreams were sharp. Stacks of documents forming staircases, each step higher, each page whispering my name. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing with a new voicemail. Miles's voice filled the speaker, shaky and strained. They're saying without your signature, the deal dies. Please. You don't understand what's at stake. But I did understand. What was at stake was not only money, but the truth of who really built the life he wanted to erase me from. I pulled back onto the highway, hands steady on the wheel. I decided the next call would not be to him. It would be to someone who knew how to turn quiet paper into loud defense. I dialed the number from the clinic again and confirmed an appointment. The receptionist said the lawyer's name like it was a safe place. Dana. I wrote it in block letters on my notes. My day now had a new shape. I stopped at a gas station, bought a cheap coffee, and sat with the steam rising against the morning sun. My hands were steady. My eyes were open. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt ready to move without fear. That's when I saw the same gray car pass the station twice. The driver's face hidden by dark glasses. The tank clicked full. I capped it tight, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. I pulled out slow, like nothing was wrong, but my pulse beat fast as thunder. By the time I reached the clinic, the sun hung low, sharp orange against the rooftops. The building was small, red brick, tucked between a pawn shop and a bakery. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of toner. A woman at the desk smiled, asked my name, and led me to a quiet room. Dana walked in with a file tucked under her arm. She looked steady, the way rivers look steady even when you know they're strong underneath. I told her the story. The kitchen, the papers, the 300 million, the midnight call. She listened without interrupting, only nodding at key parts, her pen moving across yellow legal paper. When I finished, she said, "You were right not to sign. Texas is a community property state. Your consent isn't a courtesy. It's required." She explained that even if Miles tried to force it, the bank could not move money without me. Each word felt like sunlight breaking through. I laid out the folder and pointed to the clause I had underlined. Dana read it twice, then tapped the line with her pen. "This is leverage," she said. "It's not loud, but it's strong." She warned me to guard the originals, to keep copies safe in more than one place. She said the bank and the buyer's lawyers already knew my name, even if Miles pretended otherwise. I asked what to do next. She said, "First, don't meet him alone. Second, prepare to file a notice with the court if he tries to bypass you. Third, understand your power. Don't spend it too soon." I told her about the man in the suit at the diner and the gray car circling the station. She leaned back, thoughtful. "Pressure comes in many forms," she said. "Fear is cheap. Documentation is expensive. Keep choosing the expensive path." We spent an hour building a timeline together. She circled gaps where his lawyers cut corners. She underlined email drafts that proved I was involved from the start. "These are not just memories," she said. "They're evidence." When the meeting ended, Dana gave me her card. "Call anytime," she said. Even at 3 in the morning. I walked out with the envelope heavier in my hands, but lighter in my chest. The bakery next door smelled of warm bread. I bought a roll and ate it in the car, savoring the plain taste, grounding myself in something simple. As the streetlights flickered on, I thought about all the years I played the background. The notes I typed while he spoke. The files I organized while he traveled. The nights I kept the payroll alive with nothing but grit. For the first time, I realized those quiet hours were not small. They were the roots holding the tree upright. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was not him. It was a blocked number. The text read, "Stop before you lose more than money." The text sat on my screen like a shadow. I read it twice, then saved a screenshot and forwarded it to Dana. Her reply was fast. "Keep it. Do not respond. We may need it later." I parked by the river again and spread the documents across the dashboard. Street lamps reflected off the pages like faint stars. I traced the signatures, the dates, the notary stamps. Every mark told a story of who was present, who approved, who rushed. I highlighted each inconsistency. I remembered long nights at our kitchen table when Miles said, "Just sign this quick, it's standard." I trusted him then. Now those signatures became proof that I was part of every step. I pulled out my laptop and opened old backups. I searched for draft contracts, early payroll files, emails with timestamps. Slowly, a breadcrumb trail formed. One email showed me correcting a tax ID number. Another had my initials on a budget file. Each piece felt small, but together, they painted a picture. I was not a spectator. I was the builder behind the builder. The night grew quiet. A barge moved down the river, its lights dragging across the water. I thought about how evidence is like a river, slow, steady, impossible to stop once it moves. I sent Dana a summary with attachments. She called back within minutes. "This is exactly what we need. It shows pattern and practice. Courts care about patterns." Her voice carried calm certainty, like a hand on my shoulder. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The hum of the city wrapped around me. For the first time, I did not feel erased. I felt recorded. Then my phone lit again. Miles's name. I let it ring. A voicemail followed. If you keep dragging this out, everyone loses. The buyer is angry. You're making enemies you don't want. His tone was sharper, less begging, more warning. I replayed the message twice. The words "everyone loses" echoed. I knew that in his world, everyone meant him. I put the phone down and looked at the folder one more time. Inside, near the back, was a page I hadn't noticed. A summary of assets, with a line labeled, "Retention of Spousal Rights." Next to it, blank.
My space.
My proof. I snapped a photo and saved it to 3 drives. I mailed a copy to my dad, wrapped in brown paper, and dropped it at the post office under fluorescent lights that hummed too loud. As I left, a car slowed near the curb. The window rolled down halfway. A man's voice said, "You're making this worse for yourself." The car rolled on, red taillights fading. The hearing came faster than I expected. Dana filed an emergency motion with the court to freeze any transfer until spousal consent was resolved. The judge, a tall man with a clipped voice, listened without showing expression. He read the filings, nodded once, and granted a temporary hold. The courtroom felt cold, not from air, but from eyes. Miles sat 2 rows ahead, his suit perfect, his hair trimmed, his face set in practiced calm. When the judge spoke, his jaw clenched. The order meant he couldn't touch a dollar until the court said so. Afterward, in the hallway, he came toward me. His steps were sharp, his eyes hard. He leaned close, his words meant for me alone. "You just embarrassed me in front of the board. You'll regret this." I didn't flinch. I held the folder against my chest and said nothing. Silence is sharper than any insult. He turned away, but his shoulders stayed tense, his hands fists at his sides. Outside, reporters hovered like bees. Microphones stretched. "Did you block the deal? What role did you play in the company? Are you seeking money or revenge?" Dana guided me through without a word, her presence a shield. That night, I sat in my car and replayed the day. The gavel strike, the frozen accounts, his face when the order landed. For once, he wasn't in control. But victory felt fragile. I knew men like him didn't stop with one loss. They regrouped. They pushed harder. I wrote in my notes, "The freeze is not the finish. It's only the opening. Protect the gains. Expect the strike back." My phone buzzed. A new text, this time from a number I recognized, an old colleague. It read, "Be careful. He's calling in favors." I needed calm. I drove north to Ohio to see my dad at the nursing home. The halls smelled of antiseptic and vanilla pudding. Nurses moved with quiet efficiency. Dad sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, his eyes brighter than his frail body suggested. I told him pieces of the story, enough to carry weight, but not enough to burden. He listened the way only fathers can, with silence that means he hears every word. When I finished, he said, "Truth doesn't shout, Lila. It waits. And when the noise dies, truth is still there." We talked about old times. He reminded me of the wallet I returned at the fair. He said my steady hands would guide me again. I felt strength soak back into my bones. I left him with a smile, kissed his forehead, and promised to visit again soon. Outside, the air was crisp, cleaner than Austin's heavy heat. I breathed deep, grateful for roots that reminded me of who I was before money tried to define me. On the drive back, I replayed his words. "Truth doesn't shout." That line carved itself into me like scripture. I reached a rest stop to stretch. As I walked back to the car, a folded note was tucked under the windshield wiper. My name written in block letters. I opened it slowly. The words were short and sharp. "Stop now, or you'll wish you had." The highway stretched ahead, endless and dark. I started the engine, the note still trembling in my hand. The first headline hit before sunrise. My phone lit up with a notification. Tech founder's $300 million payout frozen over spousal consent. I stared at the screen, reading the words again and again. My name wasn't in the article yet, but I knew it was only a matter of time. By noon, the story spread across Austin. Reporters circled the courthouse steps, hungry for details. I stayed quiet. Silence was my shield. I watched the frenzy build from the diner booth where I had made my stand. Dana called and said, "Do not speak until we choose the stage. Let the paper speak first." The calls came nonstop, blocked numbers, old friends, even cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Each one wanted a piece of the storm. I let them go to voicemail. What mattered was the deposition scheduled for the next morning. It would not be a courtroom, but it would be public enough for truth to stand. That night, I rehearsed what silence looks like. I practiced laying out documents without trembling. I wrote questions in my notebook that I would not answer, but would let hang heavy. A deposition is not about emotion. It is about precision. When I finally slept, I dreamed of microphones snapping open like jaws. In the dream, I stood calm while the room filled with noise. The dream ended with the slam of a door. Morning came fast. The conference room smelled of stale coffee and copier ink. Miles sat across from me, his lawyers flanking him like armor. My folder rested at my elbow, heavy and patient. The stenographer set her fingers on the keys. The first question aimed at me, "What is your role in the company?" I slid a page forward without a word. The room stilled. My role was in the records. Miles shifted in his chair. The lawyer cleared his throat and rephrased. I placed another page down, an email with his handwriting, promising my consent. The stenographer's keys clicked like rain on tin. I did not speak. I let the documents breathe louder than my voice ever could. The clock ticked. His lawyer's tone sharpened, questions fired faster. Each time, I answered with paper. Each time, the silence after landed heavier. I looked at the man I once trusted, polished and powerful, now trapped by the very lines he thought invisible. And then I pulled out the post-it note. Yellow, simple, almost childish. The reminder. Remind L to sign before wire. I placed it in the center of the table. No sound. Only the truth. The room changed when the post-it hit the table. His lawyers leaned in, whispering fast. Miles's face strained of color. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The stenographer typed every detail. Exhibit presented, notation visible, acknowledgement made. Silence filled the space like a verdict already delivered. I leaned back, calm. I did not need to raise my voice. The proof raised it for me. The buyer's attorney asked for a copy. Dana slid one across without hesitation. The attorney studied it, then nodded slowly. "This is clear," he said. Consent was not obtained. Miles's lawyer tried to object, to call it informal, meaningless. But the post-it carried weight because it told the story of intent, of knowing what he needed and choosing to ignore it. Paper doesn't lie, even when people do. The questioning shifted. They asked about my role in payroll, in vendor contracts, in compliance. Each time, I provided a draft, a file, a timestamp. The documents stacked like bricks, building a wall too high to climb. Hours passed. The stenographer's fingers never paused. My throat stayed dry, but my spine stayed straight. Finally, Dana leaned close and whispered, "That's enough." She gathered the documents in careful order. The buyer's attorney closed his folder and said, "We will advise our client accordingly." The session ended. The silence after was heavier than the hours before. Miles stood, face red, fists tight. He walked to the window and stared out at the skyline, once his empire.
He turned to me.
"You think you've won?" His voice cracked. I didn't answer. Victory is not loud. It is steady. We left the building with cameras flashing outside. Dana spoke softly. "Keep walking." Reporters shouted questions, but I kept my eyes forward. That night, I sat in my car, folder safe beside me. My phone buzzed with a new message from Miles. "We need to talk settlement." The settlement talks began in a quiet office. No reporters, no microphones. Just lawyers, papers, and the thick air of power bending. His team started with numbers high and fast, hoping to overwhelm me. They offered cash, property, assets, each packaged like gifts. I sat still.
Dana spoke for me.
We're not here for scraps, she said. I watched Miles's face as the offer slid off the table. For the first time, I saw fear behind his polish. He knew the documents could take more than money, they could take his name. Dana laid out our demand: recognition in the company's founding records, financial settlement reflecting my contributions, and legal protection against retaliation. She spoke steady, her words like measured stones. His lawyer scoffed. Miles stayed silent. Silence is a language too. The hours dragged. Coffee cooled. Tempers rose. Finally, he leaned forward, voice low. What will it take for you to end this? I met his eyes. The truth recorded. That's all. He sighed, defeated.
Fine.
You'll have it. The lawyers scribbled notes, drafted terms, pushed papers back and forth. When it ended, Dana shook my hand, firm and sure. You held your line, she said. I left the office into the cool night air. The city lights flickered across the river. For the first time in weeks, my chest loosened. But as I reached my car, a shadow moved behind me. A voice whispered close. This isn't over. I bought a small house near Lake Travis. The walls were plain, the floor creaked, but it was mine. I planted rosemary by the porch, the way I once did in coffee cans. The air smelled of cedar and water, and it felt like peace. I started volunteering at a women's legal aid center. I sat with women holding folders like mine, eyes heavy with betrayal. I told them what Dana told me. Silence can be strategy. Paper can be voice. I watched their faces soften when they realized they were not alone. I visited my dad again. I told him the storm had passed. He smiled weakly and said, Steady hands, Lila. You proved it. At night, I sat by the lake and let the sound of waves wash away the noise of lawyers, reporters, and threats. The stars above looked sharper than they ever had in the city. But quiet doesn't erase memory. One evening, as I brewed tea, the phone rang. A reporter's voice asked if I would share my side publicly. My story was already out there, but not in my words. I held the phone and thought about all the women who had been erased from their own stories. My answer formed slow, but certain. Yes, I said. It's time. The studio lights were hot, the cameras colder. I sat in the chair, microphone clipped to my collar, and looked straight ahead. The interviewer smiled, asked gentle questions, then sharper ones. I answered each with calm truth. I told the story of the kitchen, the cake, the papers. I told the story of the midnight call, the missing consent, the post-it that became a weapon of truth. I spoke not to shame, but to remind people that details matter, that dignity matters, that silence can be strength. The audience gasped at parts, cried at others. When I finished, the room stayed quiet, the kind of silence that means people are holding what they heard. The segment aired that night. The story spread faster than I imagined. Messages poured in: women, men, caretakers, founders, people who had been sidelined, erased, dismissed. They thanked me for giving voice to what they had lived. Miles faded from the headlines. His wealth remained, but his reputation thinned like paper in the rain. Mine grew steady, not as fame, but as proof that truth doesn't need volume to last. I walked by the lake the next morning, the air cool, the water calm. I thought about the journey from Ohio to Texas, from lemon cake to depositions, from silence to stage. He thought 300 million made him untouchable. But 12 hours after he erased me, he was begging for the very thing he tried to throw away. I smiled at the water and whispered my final truth. Paper trails don't forget.